I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar. This evening we have Clark Klaasen with us, and we're going to talk to Clark about his experiences as a golfer, from developing as a young golfer into his playing at Duke to transition to pro, and now trying to go big time and go to the PGA level, and part of that is qualifying school. And so as we talked about Monday, if you joined us, we talked a little bit about technically where Clark is from a biomechanics perspective as he goes into this series of qualifying school stages, getting ready for stage one. Tonight we're just going to talk to Clark about a whole lot of things about related to golf and biomechanics, and get his perspective on the whole thing, but especially his perspective on you know, moving into this professional arena and going sort of to the big time here and what it takes to get there. Before we start, I just want to let people know, if you are if you want to ask questions as we go into this, the way to do that would be to type in your question into the chat box, not the question box, but into the chat box, and we'll be answering questions periodically as they come up, and also at the end. So we'll have a little bit of time at the end for questions as we get going. So what I'd like to do then to begin is to introduce Clark, and there you see a picture of him, and you know, talk to him a little bit about what his background is as far as sports and golf, and how he got into golf. So Clark, thanks for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I think we can. If for some reason people can't hear well or there's some problem with audio, they can always chat us and let us know if there is. But yeah, I think you sound great. And I was explaining that we're just talking earlier before we got on the phone call that this is the first time that we've done this kind of format with a webinar. So Clark is our guinea pig as far as this kind of format. But I think it's a really exciting opportunity to get the player's perspective, because usually you're getting the trainer or the coach perspective. I think getting the player's perspective is really special and unique. So Clark, maybe just talk a little bit about how you got into, well, a little bit about your athletic background growing up, and then how you got into golf. Because from what I understand, from what we've talked about, you kind of got into golf seriously a little bit later in your career, and you played some other sports. So maybe you can just explain to us a little bit about how how you developed as an athlete, how you got into golf.
Yeah, I mean, golf started for me at an early age. You know, my grandpa and my dad, they cut down a set for me when I was, 4 or 5 years old, and basically it was just me, kind of whacking balls around in our backyard. My main passion really was soccer growing up. I trained for that. I was constantly practicing soccer. Golf was kind of an afterthought for the most part, and I played some tournaments growing up all the way through, middle school, and it was usually just, a summer deal. I would play soccer all spring and all fall, and then into the winter even I was playing indoor soccer and basketball. So, as soon as spring break came around and we went on a vacation, that was probably the first time I picked up a golf club since the previous summer. So, I just kind of had a knack for golf. It kind of seemed somewhat easy for me. The junior tournaments I played in, it seemed like I won most of them, and I did well. And the AJGAs and the U.S. Junior is another big event. And so for me, it was always working extremely hard at soccer, and then I had a short window for golf. And but really, ever since I can really remember, the thing I always loved doing the most was just competing, no matter what it was, whether it be soccer, basketball, golf, whatever it was. I just wanted to beat people, and that kind of carried over. And had one really, really good summer in junior golf. It was actually after I blew my knee out playing high school basketball, so I couldn't play on my premier soccer team that spring. So that kind of stemmed into me being able to just really focus on golf, because I could walk, but I just couldn't run. My ACL, I had a new ACL in, so yeah, I just spent every day at the golf course just to fill time, and then filled up a really good summer schedule, and then tore it up that summer, and a bunch of college coaches started looking at me, and yeah, that kind of got me into college golf, and then kind of decided to really commit to golf at that point.
So let me ask you, I mean, we've talked about this a bunch, as we've, worked together on stuff. What do you think, you're having a background in other sports, and in a lot of ways putting those sports first and kind of golf as almost an afterthought until a little bit later, what kind of impact do you think that had on the type of player you are now?
I think it made me a little bit more well-rounded, to be honest with you. A lot of the kids you see that are in college playing college golf, it's year-round golf. Their parents are drilling them into playing golf. They travel. It's all they do. And a lot of times, those are the kinds of guys you kind of see, taper off or kind of fade away at the end of college. You don't see them doing quite as well later on. I've always kind of thought of myself as an athlete. So when I got to college, I was very raw. I mean, my abilities were very, very raw, and I just kind of played on talent alone. And I could beat people just based on that, but it was, it wasn't very polished. And initially, a lot of guys were beating me. My freshman and sophomore years, I got my butt kicked for the most part. I still played. I was in the lineup, and I had good tournaments and that, but I was just very inconsistent. And I didn't have the experience, and up to that point, I'd always just played golf really for 3 or 4 months of the year. So it was kind of an adjustment, stepping up to that platform where you're kind of forced, and it's a full year deal, like every day. And not to say I got burnt out with golf, but I just wasn't used to doing it that much. And I didn't really know what to practice because most of the time in the summer I would just go out and play a bunch. And now we have these organized practices where you're forced, to hit a ton of golf balls, and I would get sloppy, and I didn't really understand the right way to practice or the right way to prepare for events.
Well, I mean, so speaking of that, I mean, what did you think about the Duke experience and just college golf in general? I mean, you moving from high school where, you kind of moved into playing really competitively a little bit later, played, basketball and soccer as your kind of primary sports. You're moving into Duke now, which is, a pretty good program. What was that transition like, and what did you think about collegiate golf?
Collegiate golf, it was really fun. I think was the biggest thing. At first, it was tough, but looking back, I guess I appreciate it more now than I did when I was there. You have the camaraderie of your team. You have coaches to help you out. Everything's planned and mapped out for you. You just have to show up and do essentially what the coaches tell you to do. If there's one thing I notice looking back now is that everything is kind of structured in a way that the coaches basically dictate what you're supposed to do, and I don't necessarily think that's a great thing, because on an individual to individual level, it's not like other sports where you rely on your teammates. You have set plays like in basketball or whatever. I mean, you're out there by yourself, and everyone's body and everyone's practice routine is so different. And a lot of ways, I think if you were really committed to turning professional in golf, I think maybe skipping college might actually be the best route, and I think we're seeing that today, internationally, like guys like Rory McIlroy, Yo Ishikawa, some of the great international talent, and even in the U.S., Ricky Fowler skipping his senior year. But I think that was one thing, and then on top of that, you have all these other things you have to worry about, school-wise. It felt like I was always behind in something, just constantly, grinding in the classroom, or constantly, like, basically just, what's the word I'm looking for, cramming stuff at night, and then getting up, going to workouts, and then you're in the classroom all day, and then you got to go to the course, and you're just constantly behind. And I think in a way that actually, hurts your golf game, and it felt like I was always tired for some reason. I was up late or whatever it might have been, and it just seemed like I never had a ton of energy. Then you go into tournaments and you feel a little bit burnt out from a long week of doing schoolwork and workouts and practicing, and then you're worried about doing schoolwork while you're at a tournament or writing papers in your hotel room instead of being totally focused on what you're supposed to do. terms of, managing time, thinking differently about how to stay organized. And that was one thing, I really struggled with my first 2 years of college, especially. I was just all over the place, especially my freshman year. But as time moved on, you slowly get better at it, and you become more efficient in what you're doing. So yeah. Yep.
So along those lines, I mean, as you're now transitioning here, the last couple of years from the college program to the pro ranks and playing, I'm curious about a bunch of different things. But like you said, you go into college first, and you see that in different sports. I mean, football, it's almost a prerequisite that you go, play college. Whereas, baseball, a little bit different. With golf, my curiosity then is, as you're moving from the collegiate ranks into the pro, what are some of the toughest things that you're finding, from a transition perspective, that are the toughest hurdles, I guess, for you to get over as you transition to playing pro? And then I also am curious about, not just the whatever the day-to-day hurdles might be in terms of logistics or whatever, but also in training, like what your training program was like in college. Like you say, you're juggling academics, you're juggling playing, you're juggling social life. You got, like a college, thing going on. What you were doing there versus what you do now as a pro, trying to hone your skills to go to the next level, and and what those differences are, and how it may be different for younger kids moving up. So I guess the first question is, what's the transition been like, and what are some of the hardest things about transitioning from college to pro?
All right. Well, I'll answer the first question first. Probably the most difficult thing going from college to the pros is that you can't get away with shooting mediocre scores. In college, you can shoot 73 or 74 and still be in the mix. And in the professional ranks, I mean, these guys, even at the mini tour level, you really have to be able to take it really low, and you really have to make a lot of birdies, and you got to be ready to play right away. And I would also say one thing, travel-wise, in college, everything is set up for you. They give you a travel list. They do your dry cleaning for you. You have all your travel arrangements set up. Everything's paid for, and you basically just show up and you go to the event. And when you get to the pro ranks, my first year out, I'm driving all over the place in my car. Setting up my own hotel rooms. Doing my own laundry. At least all my golf clothing, and it's very taxing. You're driving, and it wears you out a little bit. You're not. You basically have to set up all your own goals. You have to set up, your own practice schedule, your own practice routine, which is good if you do it efficiently. But my first year out, I really struggled. My first full year out, I really struggled with it, and I maybe didn't work as hard as I should have, and there's no one there to kick me in the butt to get me going. So it was tough.
Let me ask you about that, because along those lines, I know that your first year, I mean, you ended your career at Duke on some pretty high notes. I mean, qualifying for the U.S. Open, and a lot of really good stuff happened that last year for you. And then you went out, pro that first year, and I know it was tough. I mean, it was really hard. And, and I know, like, that can beat you up physically, but I'll beat you up mentally, and you're trying to make the transition that you were talking about. So, I mean, how did you cope with that? I mean, how did you cope with, not making cuts, getting beat up, physically as well as mentally, and, hanging in there and making those adjustments? Because I think a lot of players don't make the adjustments. And they fall off, or they don't. So how did you cope with that, especially that first year, that toughness, coming off a really high and kind of getting sort of the reality check of that whole thing? How did you cope with that?
Well, I would say, the real turning point probably, well, first of all, my first year after I qualified for the U.S. Open, I actually played pretty well the rest of the year. I had a limited schedule, and I kind of eased into it, and so it wasn't too hard to just go, play 6 events throughout the course of the year and be ready to go for those. And then I just missed at second stage of Q school that year, and that kind of was a downer. But, going into the off season, I kind of assumed, I'm just going to take, a couple months off, I was pretty down after second stage, and then the following year was my first full year out, and I came back, and I didn't train as hard as I should have in the off season. I wasn't physically very ready to go, and I really played poorly all year. And so first stage of Q school comes around last year, and I missed by I think 6 or 7 shots at first stage last year, and that really was the turning point. I sat down with my caddy throughout the entire 14-hour car ride we had back after first stage, and you're bummed out and whatever, but we basically talked about commitment, setting goals, continuing to play and grind through this, and I basically recommitted myself to all the training stuff, the ZenoLink stuff, and I moved down to Florida. I had a couple good events in December where I played in the Carolina Hooters Winter Series events, and then I moved down to Florida and did the entire off-season training, ZenoLink training, and it was tough at first because I was working out just extremely hard. I was training really hard, doing the kettlebells, the squats, everything, the PSTs, you name it, everything that was there, the cardio and everything. And I was struggling still. I was missing cuts on the Hooters tour, but the big turning point for me was writing down everything I needed to accomplish, writing down my weekly goals, my monthly goals, my daily goals, and then the season-long goals. And those are still written out. I still do that, and it really keeps me focused on what I'm trying to do each and every day. And and I really think sticking to the training aspect, and basically just doing what you tell me, and then on top of that, working with my instructor Brad, and then also putting down my own regimen for how I'm practicing and how I'm being efficient, and basically spending hours and hours of hard work on the range to coincide with that. And then, and then this year I've played, I think, 25 or 26 events up to this point. So obviously I've gained experience, but it was a slow process. I set mini goals each week, and I started jumping over some of those. You start small when you're struggling, so it's a top 25 or top 30 finish with, and those were the goals. And by the end of the year, especially about halfway through the summer, my only goal was to give myself chances to win golf tournaments each and every week. And so it was a long process, but I think sticking to the plan and sticking to my training, the goals I had written out for myself, and just sticking through to that through and through the ups and downs and the swings of the game has got me to the point where I am, where I feel very, very comfortable and confident when I go compete.
Well, as you get into this past year, and you're playing a lot better. You're pulling all the aspects of your game together, and now you've got a really great year, and it's been a learning year. And I know we talked about earlier, a couple of years ago even, about the transition. Having watched a number of golfers like yourself make that transition, individuals like Brian Gay and whatnot. That it's not just an overnight thing. That there's all these little components that go into it. As you've now gotten into this past year of playing, and now you're coming up on qualifying school, and you're really starting to pull things together. I mean, what do you think are some of the biggest differences in your game now compared to, say, a year ago this time?
I would say the biggest thing, first of all, my wedge play has improved tremendously, and Brad has really helped me with that aspect of my game. But I think just understanding how my body moves, and through experience and events, but I think you play so much golf, and you put into practice all these things through your training. You can really feel them, and you can really sense when you're on the golf course, well, if things aren't going well throughout the course for a tournament. I can usually figure it out now, even within a round, even inside of an individual round, where if I don't get off to a good start, I'm not hitting it necessarily the way I would like, it's usually something that I can fix, and I can understand what I'm doing. I feel like now the ZenoLink stuff, I'm still at the surface level, but I feel like it's starting to become my own, where I understand my body. I understand, especially just with conversations with you and throughout this whole process of improving and competing and trying to get where I want to be. But I really have a better sense of what my body is doing. You know, sometimes I can feel the weight going to my left heel in a tournament round, or I'm spinning out of it, and I can, you know, even if you think about it, like standing up on both feet, if you're in like I don't know, like a squatting position or whatever, and just hopping back and forth from foot to foot, you know, you can feel where the weight is supposed to be, and just being able to figure those things out on the fly in a tournament round has been huge, and it's really made my bad golf a lot better. I would say that more than anything is the biggest improvement, where your bad rounds, you know, are 72 or 71, or, you know, I feel like I've played horrible a couple rounds and got it, you know, 200 or 300 par, and, you know, a year ago my bad rounds were 76 or 77, where they just let them get off the map. So I would say just, and then, you know, that's probably the biggest thing, you know, just a better understanding of myself and my own game and how all this stuff works.
So let me ask you this then, and we'll talk a little bit more, and then we do have some questions that we can get to as well. But specifically about where you're at now and going into Q school, we better understand kind of where you've come from and some of the things that you've been you know, working on and the transition process. But we know biomechanically, we talked about this on Monday as well, that you're in a really good place. And that's been, you know, when you came out of college, you know, having the data on you through the end of your career there and then moving and transitioning in and whatnot, we knew, you know, where you were at. Even though you were playing really good golf, physically, biomechanically, you know, those pieces weren't where they could be or where they really needed to be to play against guys, you know, at the next level who have all those pieces of the puzzle, you know. So now your you know, fundamental movement, your efficiency and the more the biomechanics aspect, it greatly improved, significantly, substantially improved, and you're right on the cusp of having the types of efficient body movements of the guys you want to play against, you know, down the road. So my question, I guess, then is, you know, and we'll just have a couple of quick questions, and we'll go into some of the questions people are asking. But so going into this area of the year, the qualifying school, knowing that you're biomechanically considerably better, what has that done for your playing ability, and how are you planning on using that as you move into Q school competition? And you know, what is it that you see different about your game as a function of your efficiency, your power, things like that?
I think the biggest thing is it's way easier to prepare for events because, you know, you're not worried about how poorly you're hitting it or what kind of game is going to show up. I feel like right now, you know, I've been swinging. I feel like I'm swinging very well, and my body is moving well. So I feel much more relaxed going into Q school. I would say even going into regular season events, you kind of have a better understanding of what game is going to show up. I mean, even if it's you feel like your swing is terrible, I mean, you're still going to have a way to get the job done. So that is probably the biggest thing. And I mean, right now, the last couple of days, I mean, tweaking stuff. You know, I've really just been working on, you know, shaping different shots, just making sure, you know, my swing feels pretty tight. I've worked on my swing plane a little bit, but not to the point where I've had to think about it a whole lot. You know, mainly I've just been working on, you know, shaping my driver because I know I'm going to need that, especially for first stage, just hitting different shots of my driver on the range, and then, you know, putting those things into practice on the golf course, you know, going out and playing rounds at home. And I was even doing that at these last couple events, you know, just working on shots, even though some of the holes didn't call for it. I hit a lot of drivers on a very short, narrow golf course in my last event, which might have bit me a little bit, but, you know, I wanted to do that because I knew I was going to need that club. So, but the way my body is moving has made it just so much easier, and you know, all the work I've put in with you and with Brad to get to this point has just made preparing for Q school so much easier, and I feel so much more relaxed right now than I did a year ago going into Q school. And I'm sure I'll still be nervous, excited, adrenaline, but there's really not a whole lot I feel like I need to really grind or work through or change at this point. to go tear it up at first stage. So that's got to be the biggest difference for sure.
That's awesome. And so one other kind of quick question, and then we'll answer some of the questions that people submitted. But
yep.
So the question we've talked a little bit about, and it sort of fits in with what, where you're at, you're preparing, and the competition you're up against, and that is, the difference in what you see as competition now, compared to what it might have been a little bit ago. I mean, the athletes today, golf athletes, are training and preparing in a whole different way. You might see it like a guy like Tiger Woods kind of open the floodgates there, kind of set the bar. But I know what you're seeing, the competition level and the things that the athletes are doing to prepare are considerably different and more aggressive than I think they've ever been. So before we answer some of these other questions from people, I just thought maybe you could comment on, kind of what you're seeing as far as the athletes you're competing against, and what they're doing to prepare, and what the field is like of the new golfer coming up the ranks.
Yeah, I would say, right now there's very little disconnect from the top guys on the mini tours to the guys on the nationwide tour to the guys on the PGA Tour. If you look at, even a guy like Keegan Bradley this year, I mean, he won twice on tour this year. I know he works with Jim McLean, and he works extremely hard, but 2 years ago he won a Hooters event, and I believe that was his only professional win until he got to the PGA Tour. He won one Hooters event and played on that tour for, I believe, 2 years. And now he's won twice on the PGA Tour, including a major championship. So, I mean, the guys on the mini tour level, the guys who are winning on the mini tours, the level play to win on the mini tours is very, very close or similar to the guys who are competing to win tournaments on the PGA Tour. I mean, the guys who are on the mini tours, I'll tell you this, they are training. The guy I travel with this year, he works out constantly. He's always in the weight room. He's always running. He's always he's always grinding, working on his short game, wedges, putting. So, coming from the just looking at the mini tours, there are a ton of young guys you see a ton of first-team All-Americans who are not on the nationwide or the PGA Tour, and they're on the mini tours, and they are working extremely hard. And, it's crazy because you see guys, that are on the PGA Tour now that just a couple years ago, even like Billy Horschel this last week, he was on the eGolf Tour with me 2 years ago, and I remember hanging out with him and talking to him, and now he almost won a PGA Tour event. And I think the key thing is you just keep seeing scores getting lower and lower, and these young guys, I mean, are just they're totally fearless. They play aggressively. They're not really afraid of anyone. They don't really remember when Tiger was destroying it. They remember when Tiger was destroying everyone, but they weren't personally beaten up by him, so they're not afraid of him, and they're really not afraid of anyone. And it makes it exciting because, there's so many guys now, that these young guys, that it's really, really a toss-up who is going to win any given week. I mean, just the level of play from top to bottom has just gone through the roof, and just to keep up, I mean, and past these guys, you have to work, every bit as hard, and if not harder. So for me, it's been huge to have. I feel like I kind of have a secret weapon almost with you and with Brad together. It's a great deal, and I thankfully I've used those tools this year to help me move up and start beating a lot of guys. So it's fun. It's a fun time to be a part of professional golf, and I think the game is just going to continue to grow and improve at every level.
Yeah. Well, a couple quick questions that people have posed. We talked about the fact that you chose to go to college as opposed to, say, going right pro, and you chose to go to Duke. So maybe you could just kind of tell us, what was, what drove you to Duke? Why did you choose Duke as the program you wanted to play in?
Yeah, Duke, to me, the thing that's interesting is, I was really just kind of totally lost when I first started getting recruited, and I went to several schools. I went to Georgia Tech, Wake Forest on visits. I went to Michigan State, but I was recruited by schools all over the place. And the thing that struck me about Duke was coach, Rod Myers, there. He's passed away now, but I fell in love with him, and the practice facility was unbelievable. And obviously the school, I mean, academically it's an unbelievable school, so I figured if I got a degree from there, if I tanked in golf, I could at least do something else, hopefully.
Yeah.
But, I mean, to me, that was a very big draw, and the campus was beautiful, and really when I went there, I just fell in love with it. It was still a tough decision to say no to some of the other coaches, but I knew I was going into a place, Nate Smith was there, Ryan Blom was there, Nate is on the PGA Tour now. So I was going into a top 5 program when I signed with them, and I knew I was going to be playing with All-Americans at the time, and I thought I could learn from them and improve from them just from being around them. So that was a big draw for me as well. But yeah, I just loved the school the minute I walked onto the campus.
Gotcha. Well, and along those lines, to some degree, is as you've developed and as you explained, you were kind of raw going there, and you sort of developed on the fly and developed your game. As you move from college to your current level, what would you say right now is your biggest Achilles heel, your biggest issue? Like what is the thing that you're most struggling with in your golf game
right now?
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that. I feel like my putting has been very inconsistent this year. I would say, when I putt well, I've typically had chances to win, and at times, I'll go through lulls where it just feels like I can't make anything, and I would say that's the biggest question mark for me has definitely been my putting. And when I'm on, I'm as good. I feel like I'm as good as almost anyone, but when it's off, it's usually pretty bad. And so sometimes that can really hurt, because when you're not making anything, you're missing short putts or you're 3-putting or whatever, you're not getting up and down from fairly easy spots. It kind of wears on the rest of your game and puts pressure on your long game. If you don't hit greens, you're probably going to walk away with bogeys. And sometimes even when you hit a green, you walk away with a bogey. But it feels like it's gotten a little better. I've worked extremely hard this week and the last few weeks, and all year really. But it's shown signs of improvement. But if there was anything going into Q school I was most concerned about, it would probably be that, because at Q school you really can't afford to miss a ton of the short putts or the medium length putts. You got to make a fair amount of those as well to win stages and to keep moving on.
So along those lines, there's some questions about how many hours a day or a week that you're actually practicing and or training, and maybe you could even just do a quick breakdown. We're going to get through a bunch of these to kind of keep them, relatively to the point. But not only how many hours a week or a day, but also kind of how you divvy those up. What are you spending your time on, especially right now as you're getting ready for Q school?
Yeah. Off season, I'll make this as brief as I can. Off season, training every single day, 1 day off of training, and then in season, I typically run 2 to 3 miles 4 days a week, and then do my PSTs and then kettlebell workout once or twice a week. And then typically on a day where I'm not at a tournament, I'll run, do PSTs, maybe a kettlebell workout, and then I'll typically go practice anywhere from 4 to 7 hours after that, and then probably play 9 holes or 18 holes during those days. And then I would say 75% of the time I work on wedges from 120 yards to 60 yards, and then short game. And then the other 25% is longer clubs, especially my driver. I would say I practice the most with my driver of all my long clubs. And I say that because the length I hit the golf ball, I typically hit it to places where I'm going to have a lot of wedges. So then, therefore, I practice my driver and wedges the most. And then the in-between clubs, if you're swinging well and you're hitting your wedges solidly, you can figure out a way to hit the irons well as well.
And would you take what you just described, and would you, especially as you say, go to events of particular note, or like say qualifying school, would you adjust what you're doing in terms of where you're spending your time based on weaknesses? So if your putting is a weakness, would you adjust, or do you stay pretty consistent as you as you go to an event and just maybe intensify the area, or do you put more emphasis and more time on a weak area?
I would say I put more time into my putting the last few weeks, especially because that's something you really can't afford to do, is have a poor putting week. Obviously, everything's got to be going well. I mean, you got to be doing everything pretty well going into Q school. But especially for me, I know if I'm solid, especially from 5 or 6 feet and in, it's going to be pretty hard for me not to get through. So I'd say most of the time I practice my putting the last couple of weeks has been 3 to 7 feet distance-wise, and but it's really something you do all year. I worked extremely hard on my game all year long, so to be honest, I would say I haven't really done anything differently. I'm just trying to improve what I already do well, and with my practice, a lot of the same putting drills I've done all year long, just trying to hit solid putts, essentially, take my hands out of it, and stabilize my lower body and kind of just use my core to hit putts. And that's one of the drills Brad always has me doing when he works on me with my putting. So that's just stuff I continue to work on. Even a lot of times I'll practice with a Swiss ball between my legs while I'm hitting putts, just to, when my legs start moving, I typically start mishitting putts, and I just try to let my core move the putter head.
Yeah. So a couple quick ones before we kind of wrap things up. As you're going into qualifying school, there's a question about who your caddy is, and as you move into qualifying school, is it the same caddy you've been using, or how's that work for you?
Actually, the guy who's caddying for me, he's in one of the teachers up at Crystal Mountain. He teaches the juniors most of the summer, and he's a few years older than me, but we're good friends, and he understands and knows my golf swing. He's caddied for me probably 5 or 6 times now, and we played a ton of golf together. Very positive guy, and so he'll be with me as well, and he teaches all the same stuff my instructor does as well. So he's got a really good eye for my swing. So it's kind of like having an instructor out there with me, but he's not quite as nitpicky as Brad is. So that's good for being at a tournament. So if there's an adjustment, go a little one.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good question to finish up on, and that is, what do you think you would have accomplished by obtaining your PGA Tour card or your player card? What do you see that as far as its accomplishment, maybe above and beyond just the playing aspects, but how do you see that? What do you think you will have accomplished by obtaining your card?
Well, ever since I kind of when I was a little kid, I've always wanted to play some kind of professional sport. So as soon as I knew I was committing to golf full time, I kind of always in the back of my mind is to get to the PGA Tour, and it would mean a ton to me. It'd kind of be like a dream come true, really, to go out there and see what I can do against the best players in the world. And I think it would be a very, very exciting thing, and it would be incredible. And even the nationwide tour, I still feel like this is a progression. I'm trying to get better every single year, and eventually I know if I continue to do the right things, I feel like with my abilities, I'll get there and then succeed once I do. So, but yeah, as an accomplishment, I mean, it would be incredible. It would be it's been my dream for a while now, so it would be, I guess, a dream come true to go out there and compete on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, well, it would be an amazing year for you. I mean, you played really well all year, and just got married, and to do the qualifying deal would be really awesome this year. So and everything's kind of clicking out all cylinders. So we'll wrap up with this tonight, but I want to let people know that you have a Twitter account at Clark Klaasen, and you tweets regularly about what's going on and what you're doing, and I'm sure you'll be real focused on playing, but I'm sure you'll also keep us updated as to how things are going. And and then after first stage, we want to have you back and actually just spend some time just talking about what happened at first stage and talk about all the different aspects of playing and performance and competing.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll wrap up. I appreciate you participating and being our guinea pig as far as this slightly different format for the webinar. And wish you a ton of luck going into first stage, and really excited about the rest of the year and what it holds for you. So
you got it. Well, thanks a lot, Chris. It's always a pleasure, my man.
Thanks, and I appreciate everyone joining us. For those of you that want to review this, we'll post it on our YouTube channel and blogs and stuff. And for people that didn't attend, friends or whatever that might want to listen to it or portions of it or whatever, it'll be on YouTube channel within the next 48 hours. So take a look there. Appreciate you coming, and hope to see you on our next webinar, and then the follow-up webinar hopefully here in a few weeks with Clark after stage one, and talking about how things went and go from there. So appreciate you guys joining, and we'll see you on a future webinar.